Thank you all for joining us for our 2022 Community Voices Poet Speak program series. This evening is our celebratory closing reception featuring all of the poets in this 7-week series. My name is Nia McAllister, and I'm the Public Programs Manager at the Museum of the African Diaspora in San Francisco. As we begin, I invite you to share in the chat where you're joining us from. Though we're gathered virtually, I want to acknowledge the spaces that we're occupying. We recognize that all non-native people to this land are descendant from settler occupiers or descendants of those forcibly brought to this continent. Moab occupies the unceded land of the Ramaytush Ohlone people, and we pay our respects to the Ohlone people and their elders, both past and present, who have stewarded this land throughout the generations. We encourage everyone to learn more about the native lands that you occupy by visiting nativeland.ca. And we'll share that resource in the chat as well. Community Voices Poets Speak is an annual series that features local Bay Area poets sharing original work based on the current exhibitions on View at Moab. Today's program is the closing event in this 7-week series. And for the past 6 weeks, every Thursday at 5 p.m., we've been featuring a different poet who has the opportunity to share new writing and reflect on the inspiration of the exhibitions and process of writing ekphrastic work, or poetry based on or about art. The exhibitions currently on view at Moab are Soul of Black Folks, art by Ghanaian painter Amako Boafo, and Thread for a Web Begun, works out of silk by Malawi-born, Johannesburg-based artist Billy Zengewa. This is actually the final week to view these shows, so I highly encourage you to come visit Moab through this upcoming Sunday, February 27th. For tonight's program, we're celebrating the work of 5 poets who have participated in this series. Each poet will have their chance to share their work, their poetry, and discuss their inspiration after viewing and engaging with the exhibitions. We'll have images and visuals from the exhibitions to accompany their poetry. Unfortunately, one of our poets, Michael M.J. Jones, will be unable to attend tonight, but they send Black love and joy to our celebration. Throughout this event, I encourage you to engage through the chat and share anything that stands out to you. We'll have time for a dialogue and a Q&A at the end, so please do think of questions that you want to share and ask of our poets here. And lastly, I want to thank poets and writers for helping support this program series. Our first poet of this evening is Mical Asefaw. Mikhail is an Eritrean-American poet, activist, and blogger. She was born in Khartoum, Sudan, in a refugee camp and came to the US as an infant Eritrean refugee. She grew up in the Fillmore, San Francisco's Harlem of the West, in the African American and Eritrean communities. Mikhail draws on her history to create spoken word pieces that inspire others to think critically about race, gender roles, and identity. Mikhail uses her voice to shine light on the truth and generate more love in the world. Welcome, Mikhail.
Thank you. I'm super excited to be here and share this wonderful platform with all the other lovely artists. Thank you, Nia and Moab. So I'm going to be reading 3 pieces. And the first one is inspired by Amako Boafo's The Souls of Black People. The second one is inspired by Billy Zengewa, and it is and the last one is going to be one that I combine both inspirations and to write my own piece. But I'm going to start with The Invitation, which is a piece I wrote after viewing The Souls of Black People. Before I get started, I wanted to say that one of the interesting aspects of this exhibit with Amako Boafo's pieces is that he touches on the same ideas of W.E. Du Bois, and the exhibit is actually named after his book, The Souls of Black People. And in that, he discusses double consciousness, the color line, and the whole idea of Black people living dualities through 2 different lenses. One is the experience of being Black in mainstream America, being viewed from living life from the perspective of what white people think of us and how we have to constantly dance a dance. in our daily walk here in the United States. And then the other lens or the other perspective is that which we see ourselves, our own narrative, which is often just not told. So what his whole point in that is to show us in our own light and to show us from our own lens. And I really loved seeing Black people in just a positive light. So I am through his pieces. So I'm going to read you the invitation, and it's called The Invitation because he basically experienced discrimination in trying to get his work seen in Vienna. It was his first time trying to show his work outside of the Ghanaian world. And what ended up happening is he was told that his work was just not going to be accepted because it is that of a Black artist. And so they just didn't want to work with any Black artists from any part of the world. So he decided to create a whole other space for us where we can share our work, consume each other's work, and to uplift us as a people and to show us in our own light. So he invited other artists, Black artists, to do that. So it's called The Invitation. Okay, and also he's really into fashion. In his pieces, you can see these beautiful Black people wearing beautiful attire. And so this is called The Invitation. Fashion. Fashion this. Black man, Black woman, you are fashionable. They try to wear you. You're the most beautiful canvas. Your skin is bliss. Your existence is a kiss to the earth, the rebirth of the rebirth of the rebirth of cool. To the touch, they can't touch you. Your existence is a kiss to the earth. They stay frozen in their white boxes they try so hard to keep you out of. They have not thought of coming out of the box. Those boxes are what you bury the dead in. The dead end is not up to them. This generation climbs, so no need for boxes for those who fly and soar. With wings they've grown from moments of struggles. Those moments grow into creative flow, into finger-painted souls, into poems and rap songs and never-ending creative mode, melanized hands with surgical precision, inventing things and words and moves with vision that the world forgets to thank you for. You're welcome. Life's colorful, and we capture those moments while the white lens blinks, moments of smiles and hugs and triumphs, moments of self-reflection and deep thoughts. And in the mirror, we see the surpassing of the dreams of our ancestors to do more than survive, more than thrive. We design our lives to the full extent of our creative minds. We lead the world back to the truth. We are the origins. We are originals. Our nature is loved, loving, and lovable. Black people, love is yours and always has been. Black man, you are king. Black woman, you are goddess. No matter how many ways they tell us we are less, they keep watch for what we'll do next, and they'll try to catch it, bottle it up, box it, put it in a cup, on a plate, on a mannequin, in a study, while they study my melanin, trying to find ways to duplicate the cool embedded in my DNA. And yes, we are hypnotizing, and they stay never recognizing that they can never repeat an original. So you can try to shut me out from what is mine, but I'll just create more space in the world as long as I'm alive. And one thing's for sure, the more we are placed under pressure, the more we shine. Black man, you in your pink shorts, Black woman in your yellow blouse, you are everything. You are smooth and chiseled. You are hues of blue. You are simple, yet complex and elegant. You are king in your plaid, queen in your green clutch, Monstera print, sculpted hair, white turtleneck, bright and metal, flowers, dark, velvet, spicy, cashmere, silk, bold, gold, brown, pearls. You are head wraps in fancy caps, kufi, suit, and jeans, spirit of the shield and spirit. You are spacious, holding space for others. You are here, alive, ever so clear and ready. You are your own space, inviting me in to take up mine so that we can turn the tides of this world. Thank you. The first one. Okay. There was one piece where it has in the title Venus, and it's basically this beautiful, it's her, and she's naked and she's proud, and you can see that she's comfortable and bare, and just a beautiful image of Black women. We don't get to in a comfortable light. Often whenever we see, images of Africa or Black women, it's usually with a baby on them or carrying baskets or whatever stereotypical National Geographic like images that we often are fed. And so she does an amazing job of just being simple and wanting to reflect the power of just seeing us in a different light, in a comfortable light. And that in itself was revolutionary because we just don't get to see ourselves from that lens, from that perspective, from just not struggling. Because a lot of times we see images of Black people, it's fighting the power, it's struggling. And so there's something simple yet revolutionary about the idea that sometimes we just have everyday femininity, as she describes it. And sometimes that's just enough, and it's okay to just be simply okay. Okay, here it is, about Venus. This is about me, bare, open, comfortably me. Silk and stitches captures the acts of everyday femininity, of everyday things, of lovers, of mothers, of lovers becoming mothers, mother falling in love with child, child becoming inspiration, inspiration from moments of joy, pain, birth, rebirth, that caused me to seek silk, needle, and stitch, to immortalize the richness of my life in the form of mourning, in the form of a stretch in the morning, in the form of sunbathing, in a cup of tea. I know it awaits me, the heaviness of being Black and woman and mother in this world of ours. It holds no space to breathe. So the most revolutionary thing I could do is just be calm and present and breathing and tasting and laughing and breathing and enjoying the loves of my life in my life, my life. It is these things, the pleasures that I permit myself, leaving behind generational shame and guilt attached to self-indulgence, the simple acts of self and care that allows the world to continue to sit on my shoulders without tipping off. Beyond surviving war, beyond gunshots at my door, beyond baskets and babies on my hip, beyond carrying buckets of water for miles in the sun. Sometimes to survive, I just need a nap in the sun with my son, to be the angel at his bedside, to just lie naked, surrounded by libations, to be showered by my lover, to shower with my lover, to see the beauty of the mundane, riveting to one seeking joy in the nothings that make life everything. Stitch by stitch, I let go of hardship. I need not be attached to suffering, for the diaspora is full of that, and full of women sipping tea, remembering, telling stories, stitching and laughing and stitching and crying and stitching and living and living and living. We survive because of the everyday things. Thank you. All right, this is my last one. All right, I call this one Strong Black Woman. And so I was thinking about the way the world perceives us. I was taking what Amal Kobafu was doing, and I took what Billy was doing. I kind of combined the whole idea of like everyday femininity and also just wanting to not be put in a box and be seen as, you know, the strong Black woman, because sometimes that can be a weight when people think it's a good thing. You know, you're such a strong Black woman. Sometimes it's heavy, and sometimes I don't want to be that. I kind of just want to be. So here it is, strong Black woman. Telling me that I am a strong Black woman is not a compliment. I had nothing to do with it, being Black or woman. Would it make sense to say, what a strong white man, or what a strong white woman? You see, what is implied is that because of the color of my skin, I have endured struggle after struggle. Therefore, I'm built to handle that. Not just that, but to handle it all, and to do so with a smile, with a boldness, with invisible success, with the strength of 10 men without receiving their value or credit. But that don't matter. That just means I'm stronger. I can handle it. I can handle it longer. I am used to it. I wouldn't know any other way to be. Rest? Who needs it? Not me. You see, the pain, that isn't pain to me, because I've been there. I've done that. I will always go through that, because that is what is therefore, I am a strong Black woman, a type of superwoman, soulful, deep, wise, tired feet. That's not me, because I'm built differently. I'm a lean, mean fighting machine. I'm too numb to feel. Better make sure I'm smiling, because I'm representing all who look like me. Better to be a strong Black woman than an angry Black woman. There's no room for rage. Not when I'm on stage. So I must dance and smile and fight and smile and smile and fight and smile. And I can't let my people down, because they need me. Black people need me. Africa needs me. The diaspora needs me. But what if I put down the cape for just a moment? What if I put down my fist and took a rest for just a moment? What if I played hooky from being a strong Black woman and just wrote a poem today? What if I ate ice cream on a cold day? What if I added chocolate cake? What if I did that while my daughter's still at school? What if I broke all the rules and watched a movie? What if I looked into my lover's eyes and let him move me? What if he looked back and saw the real me? What if I just meditated on my daughter's smile? What if I just melted for a while? What if I just sat in a cozy corner and read a dystopic sci-fi thriller? What if I wrote one? What if I just gazed out at the sunset and remembered God? What if I painted the sky and felt a little heaven? What if I closed my eyes and imagined what it's like to fly? What if I prayed gratitude for the loves in my life? What if I just threw on a pretty dress and just felt pretty for tonight? Why does the world deny me a respite? What if I got it all done for me without the weight of the world on my shoulders? And just because I am a strong Black woman doesn't mean I want to be. If that offends you, I'm not sorry. To be relentlessly called strong implies that you have built muscle, tough skin from carrying heavy weight for long periods of time. But ain't I a woman? Don't I get to feel dainty and petite for just a moment? And ain't I a woman? Don't I get to feel delicate and vulnerable for just a moment? I don't need to be rescued. I just need a refuge from being Black and strong and woman. for just a moment. I am the dutiful daughter. I am the honorable mother. I am the ever loyal lover. I know that I am the untiring worker. I know that I am all of it and more all of the time. But right now, I just want to sit in the stillness, in the quiet, and feel my own life. If that offends you, I'm okay with it. Because I am a woman, and I am Black, and I am strong. But most importantly, I am human. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Oh, that was absolutely beautiful to hear all of your poems and just the play between both of the exhibitions and the images. All so lovely. Thank you so much. The next poet I would like to introduce is Eva Johnson. Eva is a poet and musician whose previous work appeared or is forthcoming in the Belham Review, Sinister Wisdom, was nominated for a Pushcart Prize. Her poems explore the interlocking caste systems and the possibilities for human connection. Eva has been a past artist in residence for Show Us Your Spines, sponsored by Radar Production and the San Francisco Public Library, and part of Cutie Pock for Show, a small and sustaining arts collective. Eva is a board member of the Marin Poetry Center. Welcome, Eva.
Thank you so much, Nia. I'm so happy to be here today and so grateful, and thank family, friends, colleagues. I see some wonderful poets here with us. Thank all of my poetry and writing communities, and to Nia McAllister and Elizabeth Gessel. Thank you so much. It's been a joy working on this project, and I'm really grateful to all the other poets on this project. I got to come to most of the other programs, and it was so amazing and so neat to see how we interacted with these works. And I also want to acknowledge the main artists are here, and I'm going to focus on those two today, but there are other exhibits as well. When you go to the MOAD, you know, it's really cool to check out the whole building. And so I just want to bring that up. I'm also acknowledging I'm here in San Francisco on Ramaytush Ohlone lands, and I want to acknowledge that this project took place during the pandemic, both between the Delta and Omicron variants, and that had an impact on all of us, I think. So I just want to acknowledge the challenging times that we're in. This project, my first ekphrastic project, I'm doing something I call a brief exploration in forms. So today, and I think maybe, Nia, you could go to the next slide. I'm going to read 4 poems. Last time I started with Amwakabwafo. This time I'm going to start with Billy Zangewa's poems. And I might talk a little bit with the poems, but I also play music before. I'll play music at the beginning, the end, and between poets. I may say a little bit, just a touch about the forms. I don't usually write in forms, so this was fun for me. Okay. So we'll start with some music and then we'll go to the first poem. So if you could go to the next slide, Mia. So what I'm doing today, I have 4 poems and 4 particular pieces that I would like you all to focus on. And this first one, the poem is called Lunch Hour Duress in the Big Apple, and it's after Billy Zangewa's On the Corner. And this poem is written in a form called the bop. The uptown bus runs on the half hour. I have to sign divorce papers and figure something out for dinner for the kids tonight and be back at my desk before my boss arrives. I'm so stressed out. In this concrete jungle, New York City, you'll always find what you're looking for. I feel lost here on the corner, don't know where to turn first. Oh, I see the lawyer's office. Let's get this over and done with. From up here, the city sparkles. I wish I could climb down that fire escape, get away from the pain of my family breaking. In this concrete jungle, New York City, you'll always find what you're looking for. The lawyer was right on time. I signed the papers and was free to sit at that joint downstairs with the seafood and ribs. I wolfed down a salad with my lunch, leaving just enough time to pick up Chinese takeout for later, all before the next bus arrived. In this concrete jungle, New York City, you'll always find what you're looking for. So thank you, Nia. If you could ever see this work and see, there's so much detail, but every aspect of the poem is in this particular piece of work. And if we could go to the next one. This one is, this poem, is going to be in the villanelle form. And this is my first villanelle. And it's called The Worst News. And it's after Billy Zengewa's Mood Indigo. And this is a very moving piece. After the phone call, I lost sight of the horizon. The doctors said there was nothing they could do. I've lost my love, but must learn to live on. I sit on the sofa crying, but must think of my little one. So thankful my mom's here with me because I'm feeling low, feeling blue. Bad news from that one call made me lose sight of the horizon. Was it only yesterday they called me a mountain? My love hoped for cure. I believed it could come true. I've lost my love, but must learn to live on. In this house I grew up in, so glad my family's a strong one. My sister brings me water, one glass, then I'll tell everyone to shoo. After that doctor's final phone call, all seems so bleak on the horizon. Let me get into the kitchen. I'll put my apron on. When tears overtake me, cooking's one thing I can do. I've lost my love, but must learn to live on. I've cooked a feast, enough to feed family, and best for last, pecan pie, and to celebrate this life, a platter of chilled watermelon slices too. After that dreadful phone call, I'll have to build a new horizon. I've lost my love, but must learn to live on. Thank you. So now we're going to move on, different floor to Amwaka Boafo. And I'm going to, I have two more poems for you. And if you go, yes, to the next slide. This next poem, and I guess I will refer back the first time we met, I read a book, and it was a bit about maybe queering the perspectives. So I've been doing that throughout these poems today and the previous time, and I'm just going to say that for this one. So I just take over the thing. So uh, I just am freeing it up for gender and queer things too. So this poem is a duplex in form. It's called Pretty, Yes, after Amwakabwafo's Pink Shorts. My rose-colored glasses were crushed under their feet. It made me turn my entire world pink. Just think. Just think my entire world's dusty rose, dusty pink, from my tux to my shirts, watermelon shorts to ripe cantaloupe top. My whole wardrobe, cantaloupe top, watermelon shorts, suits, slacks, blushes pink, fuchsia, magenta, and flamingo. I don't blush when I wear flamingo, magenta, fuchsia, or pink, because I see the world has opened to any gender in pink. Anyone of any gender everywhere on earth open to pink. Pink power, pink joy, pink self-expression, pink look. Pink self-expression, pink power, pink joy, pink. I look cool on my porcelain white stool. My afro curls dark, my lips cherry fire. I'm cool on my porcelain seat. Enjoy my tight afro curls and bubblegum lower lip. I rock the pink, powder pink background, shorts and all. Powder pink background, shorts and all, I'm rocking it. My new rose-colored glasses will never be crushed under their feet. And Nia, if you will go to the next slide, this will be the last poem, and I'll do a little music at the end of that. And I'm gonna make a slight confession to you all. It's partly in the title of the poem. I had hoped to do a sestina, but this is like complex. It takes a lot of time. I wasn't able to do it. So, what I do is it's something called like I sonetize. I have a sonetized poem for you. It's 14 lines long. The title of the poem is A Dog's BFF, a pre-Sestina persona poem, after Amwakabwafo's Hudson Burke and Benedita Furacao. And I have to tell you, I don't know who any of these people are, so everything is made up. Okay. I was so tired of one bark for yes, two barks for no. Why'd they even have to ask would I sit for my portrait? I knew I'd get the full brush treatment to show off my thick, soft, white fur. Amwako, I barked. Make sure that the background's soft like me so I can bask in its glory. At our first sitting, Hudson showed up in sweatpants. I nearly flipped out in a barking rage. If an artist is going to paint a dog and their man, that man had better look sharp. So now you know why I have a gleam in my eye, because at the second sitting, Hudson looked sharp. Crisp white shirt and that magenta and pink check suit that made us both look cute. He'd gone to the barber and his hairdo was fly to match the suit. With our erect pose and serious demeanor, his bottom lip a rose in crimson bloom, we were beautiful and ready for a lover's embrace. Thank you.
Thank you so, so much, Eva. Oh, your poetry is just so joyful, and the pairing with your music is lovely. Thank you so, so much. It is now my honor to introduce our next poet who will be performing. Aquila M. Lewis Ross is an award-winning and widely published poet, author, journalist, and artivist who uses poetry as a catalyst for healing. Her performative narrative pedagogy is centered around themes ranging from personal topics, religion, identity, women's empowerment, and social justice. In her decades-spanning practice, Aquila has explored the power of sharing personal stories towards overcoming trauma. Welcome, Aquila.
Hey, how you guys doing? So great to be in the presence of beautiful folks, and I hope everyone is doing well. I have, I'm juggling a couple of things this evening. I have a 4-year-old, so you might hear her voice, and she might be asking me some things, because I'm a mama, so I'll probably have to do that in between my performance. And I also have Wi-Fi issues, so if you can't hear me, please let me know, and I will call you guys and call in. This is working with tonight. So I am excited, so excited to be joining and sharing my work with you. And I'm gonna start off with this poem from my book. I'm gonna have 2 poems from my book, Stop Hurting and Dance, and then 2 ekphrastic poems from our artist. Okay, here we go. Stop Hurting and Dance, these poems from Stop Hurting and Dance. The first poem is Somebody's Baby, Nobody's Victim. For Aunt Sarah's and Harriet's, for Sophonia's and Bridget's, for Sweet Things and Miss Things, for Peaches, for all those remember the hurt, the pain and the hurt, for Nina. She remembers 4 hearts beating, but any more. What's on her mind? Who are they? How they come to be? Wandering from house to house, wandering. Getting in cars, wandering. Sucking on drinks and bars, still questioning, whose child am I? With tears in her eyes leaking, overflowing as the streams, the high priestess sits in between, pondering the darkness and the light. But in her mind, she remembers. She remembers her pain. She embodies their pain. See, she's been torn apart, ripped limb from limb, she's dragging, but strong. Strong enough to take the pain, and she takes it again and again, stuck between worlds with no way out. Stuck in pain and doubt, with no one to take the blame. Forced to live, still holding on to the bitterness and shame, still living, but wanting to be reborn. She's no stereotype or a fragment of what one imagined to be, or is she? And then maybe one day when they're all free, their frowns will turn to smiles. All she needs is someone to whisper in her ear, "Hush, little baby, don't cry. You are important to me. I need you to survive. You're somebody's baby, nobody's victim. I will take you as mine. Awaken, come back, alive again." That was my first ekphrastic poem that I wrote in 2014 in response to Emmy Award-winning James Gale's his painting on Nina Simone's For Women. The next poem is from my book, Stop Hurting and Dance, published by Pacino Press. And the name of the poem is She Rose. She rose. Out of the ashes, she rose. To expose the truth. For years, the story was untold. She rose from her slumber. After burying her pain, sniffing cocaine, imprisoned for years of sexual violence. She's broken and welcomes silence. She has nothing to say. She's been here before, and her ancestors too are used to this routine. Their words are useless anyway. They're invisible. Her gut is sore from the vibration of the blues. The tone is familiar to a few or too many. I've lost count. I have a fascination with the reincarnate, and 9 lives were added to her, passed on generation to generation, beginning with slavery. But pick yourself back up again and do it all over again. You must, so your babies will praise you and teach you how to dance again. Thank you. That was from my book, Stop Hurting and Dance, published by Pacino Press. And I am really looking forward to be able to do some more works. It's been about 5 years and I've really been going through life. Life's ups and downs, but I'm still smiling. And I'm looking to over the horizon and what peace really looks like. I'm really excited to be able to do ekphrastic poetry. I think that's one of my favorite forms of poetry. And the first poem that I'm going to share is from in response to Self-Care Sunday by Billy Zinger. And I wanted to share a little bit about what she says, and I got this off of Moed's website. I use fabric and sewing, which traditionally is a female pastime, to empower myself. I tell my personal story, how it's happening on the home front, and show the intimate life of a woman, which usually we're not encouraged to do. And I identify so much with Billy because of motherhood and because identity. I'm definitely trying to figure out how to make all those work and how to also interweave my personal story by using my voice. And I've been doing that since 2010 by rewriting my story and trying to figure out how to be a Thrive survivor. This poem is called My Peace. For Black beauty queens like me, Chesley, Corinne, Christ, Miss USA 2019, Sunrise, April 28, 1991, Sunset, January 30, 2022. There was a time long ago when I thought practicing self-care was easy to do, and also juggling children. And Sundays weren't like any day. Okay. Let me start again, y'all. There was a time long ago when I thought practicing self-care was easy to do, and Sundays weren't like any day. Sacred was upheld up there on a pedestal. That's what I was told to do. We warmed pews, fanned ourselves because the sermon struck a nerve or two. Anger, fear, politics, and the devil's tricks were here too. I got it together. Hairs were done, hair was in the updo, and my clothes were worn for expecting compliments. Didn't want to be mistaken for being lazy, raggedy, and unkempt. But no one really knew how undone I felt inside. I was stuck on the bishop's words about what my people are really going through. That we were taught it's selfish to care about ourselves. That we don't really know what peace feels like. We have to sneak in 15 minutes of bath time to breathe. And Sunday has never been a day of rest for Black people, and self-care has never been easy. This poem was featured on KLW, which is a radio station in San Francisco. I think it was on Tuesday, this past Tuesday, on various stations. Shout out to KLW. And shout out to Billy Zinger. Thank you so much. Now this next one is a firecracker. And I want to thank Mical Asefaw for this opportunity to really just lay it all out there. And I really loved this this painting that was portrayed. First, going to tell you a little bit about Mical. I got this also from the website. The way Waffle paints his lustrous portrait suggests a widening diaspora, imbued with change, understanding, and resolution, whereas the bodies of these subjects are discernible as literal figures occupying space and time. The looseness of Waffle's painting style suggests a transition, or one might even go so far as to say a transgression, juxtaposing the tension within the paint itself against the presses and evenly rendered line work that creates the totality of each image. Here we go, y'all. I give you fuck you mean though in response to fuck you mean though. Reading pays honor to the ancestors who were forbidden from learning how to. Deborah James. I'm kind of giddy that I get to say this right now because I don't be cussing like this no how, but I'll leave it here in this poem anyhow. The nitty gritty of this reality is quite shitty. Fuck you mean though? Y'all negotiating with terrorists though? Because they're American? Oh, mostly white, but my blackness still ain't quite right. Endemically challenged world where sheepishness wins on repeat. Herd immunity will never be reached. Evil constantly is unleashed. My middle finger's up all the way up. When I heard the news, which isn't really news, it's been here since 1619. Before really, when white folks stealing votes get to decide who can live their lives and everyone else sees their lives. Who the fuck said it was all right to close and merge the poorest schools or throw away books? I see you showing your ass now because Tony ain't here now. She'd have looks and words for your ass. She's conjuring up something now from the grave. Her third eye has been activated. Black folks beaten and bloody still. Find a way to sashay with pride. Put on war paint, prepare forgo a brave face. Come on, queen. Yes, you, boss queen. Reign supreme on that bench. Pick up your pretty. You're worn, you're tired. The only thing serving us is your damn self. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you so much, Aquila. This was absolutely wonderful. And I love the progression from seeing your very first ekphrastic poem to these recent ones as well. So thank you so much. I would now like to introduce Sha Noor Hussain, our next poet who'll be reading. Sha Noor is a writer, visual artist, and scholar crafting narratives at the nexus of Black feminist thought, queer diaspora studies, and liberatory pedagogies. Sha's poetry has been featured in Foglifter Press, the LA Review of Books, Umber, Kunja, and they have performed at the Museum of the African Diaspora, Ashara Ekundayo Gallery, Berkeley Art Museum and Pacific Film Archive, and the Black Joy Parade, just to name a few. Sha works as managing editor for Arrow Journal, publishing scholarship at the critical nexus of racial justice and spiritual wisdom. Welcome, Sha.
Thank you, Nia. And thank you, Elizabeth, for this invitation and for seeing me in so many ways. I'm really excited and honored to be here. My name is Sha. I'm an artist and a scholar. I write around themes of diaspora and memory and nostalgia and abolition and desire and the queer erotics and so on. As you can tell, I have a lot of ands. And I'm really, really overjoyed to be in the company of so many talented poets and to really experience my first time writing ekphrastic poetry. So it's nice to see people who have had experience. And for me, this was my first time really sitting down with works and writing in a way that was in response, in direct response to them in the moment. And, you know, Octavia Butler talks a little bit about and lots of Black feminists do actually, talks about writing as a portal, and keeping that portal open means writing consistently and not necessarily waiting for inspiration, but writing daily, writing all the time, writing in response. And I have to acknowledge that, like, while that's an aspiration, I don't always do it. And so we try to keep the portal open. We try to keep that meditative door open. But this practice really was very, very generative for me. And it brought forward a lot of things. It brought together a lot of things. And I'll speak more to that in a moment. I do want to acknowledge that I'm speaking from the unceded territories of the Chochenyo-speaking Ohlone people here in Oakland, California. You can find out more about the history of the land by checking out the Sorority Land Trust, a women-led Native initiative that rematriates the lands in the Bay Area, and also checking out the website of the Confederate Villages of the Lishan. So I'm going to drop those links in the chat right now. And I also want to always speak to my positionality as an Indigenous person from Africa, from Sudan. And currently in Sudan, as in many parts of the world, there is the ongoing effects of imperialism and war, tragedy, and the fight for freedom. And so if you're inclined to learn more about what's happening in Sudan, I will drop a link for the sudancoup.com where you can keep abreast of what's happening there. Yeah, and I also like to acknowledge the reality of the world that we're living in general. So I have nostalgia for the in-person, for the world outside of Zoom. However, we live in a world where Brown and Black people live under occupation and oppression and US white supremacy, and there's not enough care for people in our world so that we can actually build safely outside together right now. However, I do believe that we can make something in this future. And I think that my works right now, this reading, I really just have that as a gesture towards this abolitionist vision for the future for me. So onto the poems, and a note on my methods and praxis, which is what this slide is about. This is me at the MOAD. And yeah, as I mentioned, this is my first time doing ekphrastic poetry. And so I was really calling on and inspired by the work of Tina Campt. Tina Campt wrote a book, Listening to Images, which I have right here, and also The Black Gaze. And in her many, many books, she really cultivates what I see as a listening practice and a Black gaze. And one of her techniques is to really go and sit with the work. And so throughout this presentation, you'll see photos of me in the space, and I got as close to the ground as I felt comfortable on those days, and really just attempted to write in the moment. I would sit with the work, I would take notes, I took reference photos, I free wrote on the spot, and then I would return to those pics later. If more came, I would write, flow with it. I've edited a little bit and tried to clarify. However, my most editing happens for me actually when I present and perform my work. And so having not really presented any of these works, having all of these be new works is something for me that feels a little bit, delicate. And so I hope you all hold this with me. This work is in remix all the time. It's being remixed right now. Yeah. So we can go to the next slide. So when you enter the MOAD, I'm such an embodied person, and I was really excited for this Community Voices program because, we would have been in person. But when you enter, you're greeted with San Vernon's work, which is an installation that has collage work kind of climbing up these columns, as well as tapestries that are hanging from the ceiling and draping that are semi-transparent. And it left me really feeling with reflecting on this notion of queer memory, of inversions and gazes and looks and tensions and space. And this is what I wrote. It's called Visual Friction. And you can play, or you can go to the next slide now, actually, Nia, and then play the video. Thank you. Barely there, but lingering. A memory traces against your skin, a fragment of history. A barrier, a rubbing, a resistance, a frottage, a fabric remembered. You feel in yourself an insurmountable gap, a grasping for more. While already always knowing everything will be taken, you feel in yourself an impasse, a desire, an unmistakable push towards something else. Do you remember that time when we drove to the beach just to cry? Do you remember throwing rocks at our shadows and painting on the floor? Do you remember our impasses, our desires? Do you remember those hallways we avoided and the way our imaginations blossomed? Do you remember playing games under the blanket? Do you remember queer touch? Moving as we do with us over time, do you remember the collective? Do you remember the messiness? Do you remember the love, the urgent, urgent love? Do you remember in yourself, the impasse, the desire, the unmistakable push towards something else? Thank you. So that's my first piece, yes. Thank you, Sam, for this inspiration. Your collage was really beautiful. It was inspiring. You know, there's only a few days left to see it, y'all. Y'all really got to go see the work in person. Okay, so yeah, this next poem is inspired by, so when you go to the second floor of the Moad, you will see to your right, the emergent artist Vincent Miranda's work. And so this is inspired by Florida Jit. While I don't claim Florida, my parents live there now. And so this show was definitely very reminiscent of swampy days and humid vibes. And this is what I wrote. It's called, oh, you can go to the next slide, I think, Mia. Yeah, and so it's called, What is a Jit? A disembodied grin sits in a vase, framed in flora and dripping sweat, mosquitoes swarming, a gesture, captured. What does it mean to be a nigga with confidence? A young brown boy peacocking, a soft nigga who likes flowers and records bird songs and films sunsets. What does it mean to steam up car windows on summer nights? Breath meets sticky air, meets sticky fingers, meets wet lips, meets. What does it mean to be a jit? In a country full of niggas, a drop in a sea of diaspora, when we always know that Blackness is already always more. And I really like this piece. You know, this is probably one of the more polished ones. As I was like typing it up, I was arranging it into this thing, and it was not intentional, but at the end I like stepped back and I looked at it, and if you squint a little bit, it does, you know, give the gesture of a vase, and kind of reminds me of the artwork. So yes, when Black is already always more. Okay, so my next piece is inspired by Billy Zinger's work. She had a lot of really inspiring themes to work with, but something that really struck me from this collection, Thread for a Web Begun, was the resonant theme of self-care, of rest, of innocence. Yeah, it was very dreamy. And there was a really important aspect to the use of fabrics that were fragmented and sometimes unfinished, these pieced together tapestries. So when I took a step back from the exhibit and thought about all that, I got this piece, and it's sort of untitled, but also sort of called Beach Dreams. And you can go to the next slide, Mia. And so the piece on the left, Self-Care Sunday, is a part of this inspiration. In the middle on that long wall is Heart of the Home, which also inspired my works, but isn't directly related to the piece I'm about to read. But yeah, so you'll see a few other pieces that were inspired, like that inspired this piece as we scroll through the following images, which include Angels at My Bedside and Self-Care Sunday and Return to Paradise. I dreamt about Mama on the beach again, about floating off to sea, and looking back to see her, just there, just lounging, or maybe it was standing with her hand to brow and squinting into the horizon to make sure she saw me bobbing. Out there somewhere. She was standing on the shoreline, and I still don't know if it was real, but it was felt. And what does it mean to feel paradise? To know it in an embodied sense, like the warm sun on your neck, like the gentle push of a breeze, like the sounds of home vibrating around you. What does it mean to return to a paradise lost? To show up on the shores of the Nile and find that it had been destroyed, piles of burning rubber where your memories once lived, closed fences around Hosh Abuk, and a strange sense that the porch would never be open to the street again. What does it mean to seek paradise lost? Paradise knowing it is lost. Knowing that both home and paradise don't have a location fixed in space, but rather are moving parts in a diaspora puzzle. What does it mean to make paradise? Wherever you are, and knowing that it will be lost too in time, and not clinging to this outcome, but wrestling with the process and collaborating on its creation, and maybe having some fun along the way. What does it mean to seek joy and rest and paradise for Black people in the end of times? How will it feel? What will it look like? I imagine freedom. Strung together like prayer beads I offer to the ocean, I imagine no prisons or police or military, just vibes. I imagine everyone I love in one place, even briefly. I imagine running water and loud birds and a dry breeze. I imagine self-care Sunday every day and angels at my bedside. And you, I imagine you. Thank you. Yes to having fun along the way, okay? Because we trying in this whole end times vibe. We got to do something, y'all. Okay, thank you. And I'm really excited because I got to go to the MOAD twice. I really, I had so much fun the first time that I only was on the second floor and I didn't get to the third floor. So I was like, I gotta carve out some space. I went back another time and I'm gonna get to speak a little bit about Amafo Bako next. Mako Bafo. But I did want to say before we go there that, working with Billy Zingewa's work really left me thinking a lot about things I already think about, which includes like fragments and memories and materials and methods. And I think that there's really, really something powerful in these unfinished pieces, these pieces that have like just chunks missing. And there's really something special about the curation at the MOAD. So, when we do these poems and we say these things, we're naming the artists, but there's also curators. And I didn't name the curators. I don't have their names right now. And, I'm honoring that. But the curators put these works together and arrange them in really special ways. And that's something I can't really capture in these PowerPoints. And if I was teaching a class, I would have just more pictures and we would just talk about it more, but I have probably less than 5 minutes left. So we're not going to do that. But there's so much that is in the placement of the image as well as the choices of works that are placed. So I just really, really encourage people to like go and see the curations and see the arrangements and take your time, because it took me 2 visits in like 4 or 5 hours to really soak it in. Okay, so we can go to the next slide. Thank you, Nia. And so this next poem the next 2 poems I have are inspired by Amako Bafo's work, Soul of Black Folks, and others have really already spoken about what inspired that title and the collection. So my first set of poems are specifically for the pieces Bella Santes, The Menu, which I call Yellow Iris, Pink Estilbe, and Umber Brown Belt, which I like to call Wild Rose. Like I just renamed these pieces because I felt like it in my writing. And you'll see them on this next slide. So yeah, when you enter though, you do see this. You enter and this is what you see when you enter. And that really shaped me because on that right side, that wall had, a good number of influential pieces for me, which you'll see on the next slide. So there's what I call Yellow Iris and Bella. And then the next slide is me sitting as close as I could to the work. And shout out to the staff member who just, gave up their work day to come photograph me briefly upstairs. Yeah. So I'm gonna read this poem, which right now is untitled because it's super, super fresh. Golden girl turns her head towards me. Earrings dancing, I reach to stroke her face. Her cheek in my hand, she leans into my touch, a warm blush. I am pleased with myself, with us. Arms propped on the table and eyes dazzled, I am adorned with flowers I purchased for myself. My smile is a portal to my pleasure. Soul forward and head in hand and palm, I smirk a vision into the future, a freedom of my own making. And it feels just right. The walls hold me close like the arms of my loved ones. My ancestors are always nearby, in the whites, on my path, in the whites. And it feels just right. On the eve of loss and feeling so much and knowing that we are always on the eve of loss, on the eve of the other side, on the other side of some loss or nostalgia or growth or goodbye or rebirth or renewal, and knowing that this is our work, this other side, and grateful because today I got dressed and I prayed. And today I felt the world on my skin and grateful because sometimes that is all and all is enough. Thank you. And Nia, if you could go back actually to Libby and D. So the next, yeah. So I have one more little piece for Libby and D because they were just, you know, I was writing for Amafo and Mako, and then like Libby and D wanted their own poem. So that's what happened. And I just have that, if it's okay, if I have enough time. I really honestly lost track, but we're good. Okay. Awesome. So this is for Libby and D, and I think I'm calling it Queer Futurity. It's a short one. May or may not still stay this title. I slipped my hands around her cool waist, still moist from the river waters. Yemaya's baby had taken a dip in Oshun's flow, and they smelled like sweet honey and citrus and flowers, sunflowers, so sweet. As she pressed her back into my embrace, her face a gesture of bliss and mine paradise. Them and me in the golden sun, and drenched in love, a vision to hold and behold, a gratitude for Libby and D. Thank you. Yes, honey and citrus, all of that. Okay, so now, yeah, and what I will say is that Amafo, Ramako Bafo really left me like really sitting with texture and touch and the haptic and the body and the friction and the frottage. Actually, like everything is kind of starting to blend together. So this is what everyone left me with, and the desire, embodiment, closeness, intimacy, proximity. These are all the words that didn't or want to make it into a poem. Thinking about touch and tenderness and toughness and, you know, all that means like in this time. And I'm just really grateful to be working with and in conversation with Billy and Amafo, and also with Sam and with Vincent and in all of these Black diasporic moments. As an African in diaspora seeking these connections all the time, it really matters a lot. And so just like, I'm really thankful. And, you know, thank you again, Nia, for inviting me and everyone for being present and all your beautiful thoughts in the chat. Yeah.
Thank you so, so much, Sha. This was a lovely journey that you took us on between all of these different exhibitions. And I love how you kind of walked us up the museum floors through the work. And so that was a really, really nice touch. Thank you. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen so that our next and final reader for this evening can share theirs. And with that, I would like to introduce Ronaldo Weed Wilson. Ronaldo is an interdisciplinary artist, poet, and scholar, and the author of Narrative of the Life of the Brown Boy and the White Man, Poems of the Black Object, Farther Traveler, Poetry, Prose, Other, and Lucy 72, Wilson's Carmelina Figures, and Virgil Kill's Stories are forthcoming this year. Ronaldo is a professor of creative writing and literature at UC Santa Cruz, serving on the core faculty of the Creative Critical PhD program and Principal Faculty of the Critical Race and Ethnic Studies. Welcome, Ronaldo. And you're still muted.
I think I'm on now, sorry.
There you
Can
go.
you hear me right now?
Yep.
A little glitch. Well, this has been, quite a beautiful journey, and thank you, Nia, for hosting, and Elizabeth and Michal, Eva, Aquila, and Sha for all of the kind of adventures, I think, in the work. My work is, I'm so glad that the work was so capacious, both in framing, framing all of the works in both proximity, but also in great generosity, sort of macro and micro looking. So hopefully I'll add to the music tonight in a way that I can. I'm working with another rendering from the first talk, which I think was walking with Amako, Boafo, Vincent Miranda, and Billy Zengewa in ekphrasis. I decided to take on this as an exercise. I think a lot with visual artists. The two that came to mind just now, as I was thinking around your talks, were two artists. One is the artist Adrian Piper, particularly early Adrian Piper, in the ways that she meditated and walked and really self-actualized and self-embodied the grid making process in her early work, repeating meditations on corners, moving and rewriting those works together. And the other artist that I'm thinking of is William Kentridge, who's also a wanderer too, who talks about pacing in the work as a way of pacing in the studio as a way of organizing the work. So I thought about this, the work is bookended in life through familial loss, I think. Also, next to familial loss, I think great art making. I was at McDowell just before the summer and I lost a parent. And so all of these things were kind of working together, I think, in walking into the museum. So in some ways, this project has been a bit of a sanctuary. So it's moving from walking to as with. Let's see if I can. I'll just keep it simple.
Difference is a beautiful thing. Difference too allows perspective. That is, at any moment, when the story is a window, or the bowl is a shrimp, or the chocolate is a texture in the flake, or you are surrounded in another painting. The Bachelor 2007 stories too. There are mumblings around you. Go into the fabric. Go into the flat surface. Go into the surface. In the last 5 minutes, Mother's hands in the turkey, her onions coating her fingers worn from work, and sewing too in needles, the red tomato pincushion or sewing machine that I gather and remember and hold and detail and understand to be a facet of a life. Pinprick back to the imagination, where the imagination shadow is undone. This is a culling or a calming experience, to be here, to make it on the run. In my art, I followed the snow. In my critique, I followed knowing.
I should say I left two things out of this piece, but I would also say that they are indelibly marked within the making in the production of what may look like a poem, but I think is closer to a gesture towards what the poem might be. What I left out was maybe the distance between the paintings, the raw silk, the pin cushion, and the seam ripper, which went into my foot as a child. The Eyes Have It is the title of this long meditation, and it walks through the three artists that are mentioned in the title. Fuck You Mean Though, after AB 2019. Du Bois is buried in the Osu neighborhood of Accra, Ghana, where Oafo grew up. The Souls of Black Folk is an ethnographic study of Black life behind the veil of race. This research resulted in the coining of the phrase double consciousness, which evokes this sense of Black people constantly having to look at themselves through the eyes of others. As you will see in this talk, a talk perhaps more of detail than encompassment, I'm very interested in the eyes, in extracting the eyes of other as a formative strategy that moves through the critical valence of assessment, the embodied feeling of being. The tip of the eyelash dips at the under arc of the finger. Smudge meets above the hematoma, which is what whiteout can do in the erasure of the senses, of all the leakages in veils, swirl, rough voices spit into where the fingerprint meets such privacies in oil on or as the skin. I had to double check to make sure this was oil on paper. And as a painter who works often on paper, I've never really yet worked on pure oil, but I was really interested in all of the fingering that was going on. I don't know if it was jealousy before I hit the signature. And I was interested in the mark making of signing, that each gesture was like the signature. And in Boafo's works, the signature serves as a kind of, I'd say it's almost like an imprint, a saddle stitch, a mark, a designer brand, savvy. I heard too, his work is on the side of rocket ships. In the last talk, I think I tried to make a parallel connection between the eyes, our eyes, and also the eyes as a kind of entrance point, portal, escape valve. What I like to do when I look at visual art, I think about painting and drawing and feeling and seeing, and though I can't touch the work, I'm really interested in the production of how to get things right, how to get, particularly when I'm thinking about when someone's working between figuration and the real. So I was really interested in that moment right between the finger, the nail and the eyelash. Dead substances, Black Lives Matters there too. They go after we're dead, nails and hair. In cycle 2, The Eyes Have It reveals a story about being assaulted at home, but Black Pinoy Black brother on Black Pinoy Black little brother violence for dancing in front of a TV is only as criminal as the exactness of the attack, a popcorn popper toy that once rolled on the floor. Maybe a baby pushed it. where the balls can no longer pop because the dome is bent into a cracked edge. Polyurethane edge. Axe edge? No. Plastic hammer as spear tip. Its jagged fold breaks bone. I tire of having to blind them so they can see me. Further still on down the line, about a half a mile or so. They need to stop lying, mostly to themselves. Eat something sweet. One brown boy attacks another brown boy for whistling in home ec, humming. It isn't always bad breath, or it is never direct, the panic, which is also an exhaustion. An ever frost on the fountain's pool in the resort, frozen off season clutch. Microaggressions are not universal, nor is the extant clutch as operative, the gears that mark the body as in its inside, behind the eyes, in the art. In the point of view, funked, foreshortened, handle flat as Matisse pause, EVE, dead of AIDS 2 inside heroic Super Bowl bombs, da-na-na-na-na. Out of the plastic finger is the gumminess of brown lollygagging grids that say a grill is a grill. But what about mosquitoes that too would sting the eyes if they could? Across grids, symmetry of the axis where it floats along the apex, golden fronts, whose face still gets blown off anyway to reveal. In Southern Florida, Vincent Miranda's work explores the embodied tension of being caught between multiple cultural identities. This seeming lack of self created what the artist calls an identity vacuum. I too love the role of the curator, who not only positions and imagines the work positioned for other eyes, but often, or in most cases, helps to also curate and to add verbal art to the language. So much so that the identity vacuum for me not only exists as the mosquito's proboscis, that thing that sucks the blood in, that thing in Vincent Miranda's work at the very edges of those fingers, frozen in time. Are they real? Are they fake? A Mako Boafo green clutch. I spent a lot of time thinking about the clutch. It was a center point for me, much like the vacuum that holds the insistent clutch of race that diffuses the relationship between one mark on the racial grid and another mark on the racial grid. I thought a lot about clutches. I haven't written about clutches so much, but I thought about them in cars, the way that the clutch maintains the speed and exists as an invisible thing in the car. I thought, is that how microaggressions work? Clutches in the speed wire of the car, those things in the car, you don't know when it happens, but you know when it happens. The reference to Matisse was exact for me. The flatness in the work is exact for Boafo. For me, as a critic, I'm satisfied. But as a poet, I want to get under it. Sheet wire, Oh no. Let's see how I tried. I tried very hard to render. The eye's habit is caught too in the clutch between two works. Ekphrasis, definition, the use of detailed description of a work of visual art as a literary device. Florida Jit, VM, and White Turtleneck, AB. Mid-17th century via Latin from Greek ekphrasis, description from ekphrasian, recount. From eke out plus phrasin, tell. I'm encouraged in so many ways by the dynamic insistence of the ekphrastic as both lesson, journey, invitation, and also site where the story might occur. After all, as a writer and as an artist, for me, I'm preoccupied with stories. That's all. Part of the process in revisiting the earlier slides was to better see the visual rhymes that are occurring between the work, which is probably curatorial, probably intentional. I should say intentional from the vantage point of the Black artist who understands the relationship between the body, embodiment, sign, and also stasis. That is, how does one as a Black artist hold the double consciousness in its most palpable state? What visual art allows, sculpture, working across media, interdisciplinary factors, allows for a vase to become a leaf, to become a finger, to hold back in that finger, not pointing, but touching. All I was interested in my imagination, where the poem is happening here, and probably the curatorial stance, has to do with shape, the flora and the fabric, the white turtleneck and the leaf. What emerges out of that kind of Blackness? So you could say, in many ways, the stance here that I'm taking through my reading of this work is conceptual. That what I recognize across these artists is not only the painterly, the drawn, the sewn, but like my two favorite figures, two of them in the world, the conceptual. How do we reconceive or recapitulate, reimagine, retell a story on our own terms, in our own language, in our own brushstrokes, through our own materials? Well, obviously, not only do we have rhymes, but we have to see how they rhyme. Check the leaves, check the sweater, check the leaves, check the sweater. Neither of them are Black, but they're all Black. You'll see my attention to the eyes. I might have said something about the eyes in the poem, but I'm still haunted by the gapiness of them, the definition of them by the finger stroke, so that which is what I'm working on in my work and my painting, is understanding that it's okay to work in 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 sort of highly representational work that leans into abstraction, that one doesn't need to just be a figurative painter or an abstract painter. There's something I have to think about more in terms of my own research, the relationship between the figurative and the real, as a method through which to, actually get at double consciousness. It's not always so clear. Though this struck me as super important. I think that's being conveyed in the gestures of my characters. Is the gesture enough? I hope so. It is in the opening of the eye, not the eye as in the lid's doing or the process of whatever signal is sent to route between the walk in state and the being state, but something else altogether. When it comes to the gate, the tugged open, the pulled, the drape to let in the facets. In this instance, some things leak as to the fingers open in the stretch of the short pool. When my father died in November, my sister told me while I was at Cal Fit in Elk Grove on bond, she said, Dad's heart stopped, which is radically different than Dad is dead, because I could then see something else in the water and could feel its tremendous cold, almost debilitating, the shock of the water, even as I was already in. The leaves fell into the pool sometime before and sometime after I gathered them. So you might have noticed the leaves in the beginning of the film, which is this poem. Those leaves, when I was swimming in the pool, sort of just gathered around me. And I went back another week, and those leaves were on the bottom of the pool. So I collected them and put them in a bag. And I was afraid because I thought they'd lost their shape. But when I opened them today, I realized they retained their shape. And I thought, wow, these are the materials I'm interested in. The tissue that my mother used on her face as she left her husband in the hospital, well, her dead husband, my father, and the leaves. Those are the only things I care about. Those two textures. I don't know if I learned that from looking at these artists, but I know that I'm sure that I have to use them because of Boafo's work, because of Zengewa's work, and because of even the emergent. This really, the emergent maybe more than all, that materiality, just to remind us that the material matters, right? It's precious for me, right? These leaves and this tissue is precious, you know? The eyes have it in Self-Care Sunday, awareness, and I think that's being conveyed in the gestures of my characters, Billy Zinger. I had to kick their lawn to their teeth in order to save them, Gwendolyn Brooks. I too love curators who make it possible to look close. I also love the portrait feature on the iPhone. It's so bomb. It allows you to really get in there sometimes and really capture those shadows. I think it's important to take advantage of that. So these are all reduced images or detailed images from White Christmas that interested me then when I first put together this one version of this talk and also this version today. I realized looking through it that part of the process of working through this with you all actually is kind of delineating mourning, extracting mourning, and placing it into, I think, a really complex mirror. Upon the occasion the eyes have it, it It is fact, gestural, as in what actually matters is the puzzling relationship between what the eye sees and what it seizes, as in it might be found in the signature repeated again and again over the body that after all is not a terminus, but a black box way back into the space where the sewing is the morning. Where is my clutch? Here is my clutch. It exists as if it moves in reminder of the digging. I cut my father's hair and left his soft gray hair on the outside, and my mother seized it, dug it back. My mother has torn up the yard, or she has torn into it, digging up and uprooting, as in making one's way into the surface. The gesture of the digging is as smooth as the stroke cutting through the water, turning into the surface so that it might find its way back, not to the self, but to the act. It is and it is not about the fray. It is and is about to fray. So this is helpful for me. The earlier images in the film are of my 86-year-old, 85-pound mother who's pretty much rototilled the entire backyard. And that digging, that's her exercise now. She digs 4 hours a day, digging and digging. And I was so, I know what she's doing. Planting. Eye, ear, and temple. What the artist who sews knows is what the finger pushes and the vase clutches. Facts. Embroidered silk renders the raw, or is predicate to the predictive, is the errant heart in the field of black and gray and pink and cold and human as being. And so I'll close with a short film that I actually made sort of my last week at McDowell. My father had passed. I went to this retreat. My mother had fallen, really a terrible fall. I talked to her every day in the hospital. I couldn't make work. But what I did was I just went outside every day and made these, what I called these snow walks. And so here's a tiny snow walk, and I'll play it for you. And I shall stop after this. Dear Father, I have gone away. Dear Father, I have gone away. Dear Father, I have gone away. I know the sound. Dear Father, I have gone away. I know the sound is coming through. Dear Father, I have gone away. I know you are there. I'll just want to end on one tiny little rhyme here, is that I do not think art is anything but predictive. I think that we are drawn to art as diasporic people in some way, through ancestry, through time, through the human condition, to go back. And in fact, I loved seeing these echoes after the fact and the kind of predictive quality of the work. And so that is what I'm most thankful for, and for learning new techniques, and also working and hearing all of your work and being in company with you. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Ronaldo, for this presentation. There is such depth here in the images that you've shared and the videos that you've created. And I really appreciated how, with both your poetry and all of the poets here, how you return to some of the same images, some of the poems, but it's, in my opinion, feels like a whole new experience, getting to revisit some of these pieces. And so Thank you all. And I want us to now transition to a Q&A and invite a dialogue about all that we've just experienced. And it's such a treat that we have all 5 poets here so you can actually be in conversation about this work. And so I invite our audience here to either drop questions in the chat. You're welcome, as I mentioned, to either direct a question to an individual poet or to all the poets, and we'll kind of pass the mic between them. Alternatively, if you'd like to ask the question directly, you're welcome to raise your hand and I will call on you. So does anyone have a question to kick us off? Wonderful, a question from Reina. This is for everyone. If art is predictive, if we accept this as truth from Ronaldo, what do you all see as coming as foretold by your work now? What do you see as coming from the art that specifically captivated you at MOAD? I'll pass it off to Mikhail first.
Okay, say that again. Repeat the question.
If we accept that art is predictive, what do you see as coming as foretold by your work now? And what do you see as coming from the art that you specifically captivated you at MOAD?
You're gonna have to come back to me on that one, sister. Yeah, I'm gonna think on that.
We'll circle back. Do any of the other poets have Eva, you have your hand up.
Reina, thank you. And I wanted to say thank you. Reina is the person who got me into this ekphrastic project. All I will say this project, I love how it's called Community Voices. That took me a while to know what to say at the door to get in. And even though we're on Zoom, I just loved hearing everyone. I know for me, I am not an artist. I've become a poet, but I'm a lover of art. I've always loved art, but I've never done an ekphrastic project. So I think moving forward, and what this foretells for me is, one, I will do future ekphrastic work. I'm thinking about really diasporic ekphrastic work as I see art and just keep building on that. I also see, especially through this project, for this specific art that was in this project, and both the big exhibits and the small, it's giving me a whole different way to think about museums, the museum, its physical footprint, spending time with the work. I spend time with artwork in my own. I always just go through exhibits, I pick out my favorites, and then I go back to them and I go to my favorites again. That's just my usual thing to do. But in doing this project, seeing what everyone, the things we shared, some same and some different, it's such a value to going back to the work and reinterpreting it. And really, I'm going to start thinking more ekphrastically in general. Like if I'm really inspired, maybe I would just write poems just for the fun of it and not for a project. And that's really cool. I have such respect for forms and all the kinds of forms of what everyone did in this group. Such respect for this group. It was so wonderful. So I don't know if that answers your question, Reina, but thank you. It's altering my work as a poet, I think, moving forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Eva. I definitely agree with you on your points. Yes, thank you, Reina, also for the question. I'm not gonna lie to y'all. The last 5 years have been really challenging. Challenging trying to figure out how to incorporate myself as an artist, as a mom, as an artivist. I'm juggling a lot, and I've been slowly writing down how I'm feeling in the moments. It's just been hard, very hard. And I forgot which artist wrote the poem about being strong Black women. Oh my goodness, yes, I agree. I agree so much with your poem. I also wrote about, I write in my poetry, I write about that and how I hate that word and how I also hate, there's another word, or not hate, but dislike. People have called resilient. I don't like that word as well. So I'm trying to figure out how to make everything work. slowly, which is great because I'm able to really think things through and really understand what I'm supposed to be doing in this world. My life is constantly changing, and change is hard. I'm not saying it's good, but I'm not saying it's bad. As it's just a lot. I'm laughing, but I'm really not feeling like laughing. But ekphrastic poetry, I think, is, like I said, is one of my favorite, I think, types of poems, genres of writing. I love working with artists, visual artists, musicians, production artists. I have that in my background as well. I'm a radio journalist. And so I'm also going to move into the podcasting and print writing. All of that is just really great. I like to incorporate everything into my work. Since I have a 4-year-old, I've been thinking a lot about how to incorporate my work with her as well. So that's something that probably will come to the horizon sometime. But thank you so much.
Sha or Ronaldo, do you want to jump in?
I'll share. Yeah. Thank you, Raina, for this question. It's a really good one. I will say that what I see coming for Told from my work, I hope, is abolitionist futures. That's it. No police, just vibes. Yeah, and that's my quick and dirty answer for that one.
Well, that's a beautiful answer. I think, for me, I think that what's striking is Eva, what were you playing? What instrument was that? I mean, I'm such an ignoramus. I don't know. Was that a flute? I know it's something more advanced. Was it? Oh, it was? Oh, well, that you are working full time in that capacity as an artist. I don't know what you're talking about, which I thought was really beautiful. And so one of the things I think that cut across all of the pieces today was both attention to, the kind of, I say musicality and I mean it seriously in terms of the kind of tactile features of the work. And while I don't think the work in the museum that I saw was really bound by that sensibility, what I really loved about it and what's predictive for me is a kind of return to materiality, a return to fabrics, paint, touching, which to me supersedes all of the kind of fanciness. And for me, working in film or working in video or working in, interdisciplinary practices, what I love about it is two things. One is knowing that curation was so strong at the level of understanding how to present the texture of the work together, I thought was really beautiful, but also the kind of inherently diasporic and globally interesting intersections that were happening without the kind of the weight of kind of, I think sometimes the Academy tends to put such a high threshold on intersectionality or kind of the global South, but what I loved about this is all that stuff was there, right? Because you had Ghanaian, a kind of Ghanaian in work, and South Africa, and also US Florida work, but all of them I think were so syncretic in a way that was both organic and natural. They didn't need the kind of explanation and heat and heaviness of theory to make it work. Like, it embodies it. And to me, that's actually the future of for me. It's what I'm forward thinking through, because I really don't have time to be mired by a kind of oppositional theoretical stance. I'm over it, right? But what I love about this was that the work was intentional and not reactionary. So that kind of intentional work is important for me. And it was important that it was in a small space and that each of the artists had a lot of room. And I think that curatorial reminds me of how to think about artists. Even for me, I didn't see the film work, but the last thing I'll say is a lot of what I thought about was the simple term, like the diptych, as a way of returning, compare and contrast. Like, you don't have to have 1,000 ways into an article to kill the art so you can make your argument. Kill me instead. Sorry.
Sorry. Mikhail, do you have thoughts on this as well?
So what's to come? I was thinking about this the other day. I was just reflecting on all of the pieces I've written over as long as I've collected my work from when I was a kid all the way till now. I used to get so upset when my siblings would throw my pieces out. Just be like, I collected some, and I still go back and reference what I wrote. But just watching myself through my own words, I think as human beings as a whole, we are predictive. We're predictable. We know we're cyclical. We all go through the same state of emotions. We all have the same set of emotions, and maybe not the same problems, but we think our way out of problems the same because we're humans. We're all designed to be the same to a certain extent. We all have our different things, our cultures and stuff, but we still, at the end of the day, we're all human beings. And we all go through the same roller coasters in one way or another. But I'm not predictable to myself. I don't know what I'm going to come up with, but I'm sure someone out there has written about it. Someone in the past has written about it. Someone in the future is going to keep writing about it. But I do want to be open to my own life. I want to be open to what is out there that's going to inspire me or trigger me. And it's going to need to be put down on paper, and someone else will look at that and that will inspire them or trigger them. But I just want to be open to myself. And my motherhood has taken my poetry to a whole other world that, expanded me in a way where I look at empathy in a whole other way. I look at humans in a whole other way, just knowing that we have history. We were once children. And when you raise children, you recognize that everyone has asked the most amazing questions as that we don't remember anymore. But like, just to know, just being a mom has allowed me to recognize humans on a more profound level and question like, what happened to that person as a child? Or wow, what was it like for that person to be a child? And, you just think things about people in a different way. And it's not a motherly way. It's just, you just know that humans are raising humans, and it's magical to know that, we can become whatever we want to become, and given the right guidance and support, that we can do anything we achieve. And even then, even when we're not given that, somehow the human spirit is magical. And being a mom has allowed me to witness that from scratch, right? So I love that. And the me now is different than the me 10 years ago before I was a mom. And she was more focused on the revolution, and she was trying to change the world, and she wanted to end, poverty and all that. And now I'm expanded, and I'm understanding that if I could just do that within my corner, it's just as significant than if I could change the world, because it's really not about one individual trying to change the world. We really need each other. It's a collective. And I could start with my child, and I can start with my words, and I can start with my corner of the world and my community. That's where I'm at right now. I might go back and start a revolution. I don't know, but please join me if I do. Yeah, that's what I have to say. Thank you so much for that question.
We'll be ready when you do.
Okay.
There's a question here that's directly for Eva. This is from Katie, who's asking, how did the art influence the music you played today? Can you speak on that, Eva?
Thank you, Katie, for that question. That's a wonderful question. So I tend to, what can I say? When I play music with my poems, I'm improvising. Generally, I'm using a standard blues scale. And for this project, for tonight, that especially that Mood Indigo piece of Billy Zangewa, that it just made me feel so sad, and the blues that got me into that. So that last piece that was about the dog, I just thought that was the funniest painting. So and when I realized I'm gonna do a persona poem of a dog, like talking about the process of having portraiture done, the music was in a different key. So there's something that I call it meta ekphrastic. Like there's a certain way when I'm playing to you what sometimes I'm playing what the poem feels like to me in music. But this project was even more rich in that I'm playing what the art feels like to me in music as I've made a poem, as you all are witnessing, and we're sharing it together, and as we are poets sharing it together. So that's just something I call meta ekphrastic, whatever medium it's in, they can all be expressed one way or another. So I hope that helps answer your question, Katie. What a great question.
I love that concept of meta-ekphrastic. That's great. And I think to close this dialogue, which is already so rich, I'm going to bring up Stacy's question, who also affirms that this has just been such a marvelous experience. But they're asking, and this is for any and all of you, which response / poetry was most surprising to you, given your own understanding of the art? And excuse me, this was from Tony Hale via Stacy.
I think the rich part of that question is the like unexpectedness, and the part where you say like, yeah, I'm just trying to actually pull up the question first and really quote it. Most surprising given your own understanding of the art. Okay, so that part is the part that's sticking out to me. And when I saw Sam Vernon's work, the first time, I wrote like all these notes down that were very different than the poem that I read today. Because as I was taking those notes and like writing them and clarifying them and adding, something entirely different came up, and that showed up in the, if you could see the visual poem, it showed up as like a block paragraph of prose in the middle of all this other stuff. And so I feel like that was surprising. And I just kind of started to feel this differentness while I was writing, and I went with it. And when I read it back to myself, I felt like an emotional wave that really just justified its presence. And I left it as is. So that's one part that was very surprising. I think in general, all of my responses were surprising. I found this practice very generative, way more generative than what I intended. And I definitely intended to create like a bunch of things. And I think also for Libby and Dee, the extra poem that the piece sort of required was another surprise. And that's my answer. Thank you for that question.
So I am visiting with you guys on Zoom here in Las Vegas, and I'm from the Bay Area, but I wasn't able to. I was able to go to the exhibit during Thanksgiving, so that was my only time that I was able to visit. So I took pictures, and I sat with the space. That was my first time at Moab, and it just felt so beautiful. Like my whole body felt like I was receiving something. I took pictures, and then I set the pictures down and never came back to it again until the week of my presentation, February 3rd. So I looked back at the pictures, and I was like, oh my goodness, wow, those are amazing. I'm not sure what I was looking at before when I first went to see the exhibit, but something struck me, and I was just like, okay, let me just take it, just take this picture. And after looking again, I think I was really loving Boafo's picture of fuck you mean, because I was raised by a black single Republican Christian, and my whole experience is something I still have to write about. But just that poem is like, okay, yes, this is what I need to do. And then just really paying attention to what's happening on the news and everything that I'm going through. I just had to put it in there in that poem. And I still have a lot more to say. But I really want to say thank you for, I guess, the invitation to come out of myself and forget about how I was raised, forget about what people say, what people do, and just really say what I want to say and put out what I really want to say. So I was really grateful, actually. I felt relieved to be able to have the opportunity to do that. So, and I shout out to Moad. You guys have a beautiful space there. And people who have never been there, you need to go.
I wanted to add to that because it's fresh in my mind. It's such a complicated and beautiful question, because I was thinking about just being so surprised by the work by the other poet, by everyone who read tonight, and feeling as though we were each hovering around a sensibility of understanding that fragmentation or a kind of incomplete is one pure possibility. And I was thinking about that in relationship to what I heard, the kind of attention to horizon, attention to magic or voices or family or musicality, all of those things that I think were happening at the edge of experience, I think was so compelling. For me, in terms of just thinking about the art just really closely, is that what I'm really struck with is the rendering of fragmentation through intentional modes, stitching, right, but leaving gaps open, or painterly work that is unafraid to show a kind of warped eye, the things I love about, painters like Jacob Lawrence or folks who are really invested in it. But what I really appreciated was, and I didn't realize this until I began writing, is that if I think about the kind of duration of contemporary Black artists that I saw here that are working in fragmentation, I was so moved by the kind of unconscious deliverance of the work, in that the gaps and the breaks in the work completely, I didn't realize it, but they seeped into my unconsciousness, the kind of my non-thinking self. So I realized that I was much more moved, not just emotionally, but moved to work in a different way, to be okay with maybe rendering incompleteness as a form that has great psychic, I think, consequence. And I would love to look at the works very, very closely, because that too, I think, is on the other side of, of the always social unrest, is how do we mark the kind of a reckoning with our obvious fragmentation, but also our collective spirit that knows how to gather at the hems, and knows how to collect at the edges, right? I think there's something very beautiful about the work. I haven't thought about it, but I would love to also be more surprised by the question of landscape in the work. Even though these are portraiture-based works, except for so it's a really fascinating question, because I think there's something actually quite haunting about it. When one really goes to what is remarkable about these, but what's holding them together. They all seem like they're so fragile in a way, except for that Boafo, not very fragile guy. That painter is very, very, working and very, very, I like that. It's really taken up that space, in its own way. Fragile too in that act. Wonderful question. Thank you for helping us to think.
Eva or Michal, do you want to respond?
I'm so into like what everybody's saying, I kind of forgot the question. Can you repeat it again?
Sure. This was a question about kind of what surprised you most, especially thinking about also these responses as well tonight.
I think what surprised me most is that I was surprised at the simplicity of the pieces, even though they're complex. Like, I think the messaging, when I visited, I'm from Eritrea in East Africa on the coast of the Red Sea, next to Ethiopia, and next to Egypt, Sudan, sorry. What's up, Sha? So what I wanted to say is that when I went over there, because I grew up in the United States, I came here when I was 8 months old as a baby, don't know any other place. But when I went there, for about 3 months, I felt haunted by something that I couldn't quite figure out. I could not understand why I felt like deeply disturbed, even though it was a beautiful place. It was lovely. And it was a moment where I put my backpack at the store, and this guy, for the third time for 3 days in a row, and this guy says to me, "I'm tired of you Americans. You keep giving me your bags like we're your servants." And I said, "Oh, I'm giving you my bag because I didn't want you to think I was going to steal anything." And he says to me, "Why would anybody think you would steal anything? Why would anybody expect you to do that?" And it dawned on me, the racism that exists here conditions your behavior. It conditions your what you predict is going to happen. Like, we all are living with, as Black people, a certain amount of anxiety that we're just normalized to. And depending on where you are in this country, or what your I mean, not, I was going to say income and all that, but even then, it doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter what you do for a living. Because you're Black, you are always walking around with some conscious level of anxiety, and then there's that subconscious level of anxiety that you're not even familiar that you have until you go somewhere where you don't have to deal with racism. And so it surfaced for me that being in a Black dominated country, it's really hard to wrap your mind around being a minority, one, and two, recognizing that you always have to defend yourself, even when nobody's there to defend yourself from. And so what I'm experiencing when I see Mical Asefaw and Billy's work is that they're coming from that place where they're not having to explain themselves, where they don't have to, where they're not the minority. And there's a calm in their work, even though they're addressing racism and certain things that we experience. It's from a totally different perspective, where it's not that I have to see myself struggling, because people in Africa aren't always struggling. There's middle-class people, there are wealthy people, they're everyday people. They have streets just like us. There are lights just like us, the street lights. There's normal everyday stuff that they have, that, all the stuff that we see on the news. And again, I always reference National Geographic, because that's how everybody thought that my people lived, but just the idea that I'm revisiting that, but I'm in the United States, and I'm already heightened with all that's gone on with Trump and with the pandemic and George Floyd. I feel like something is off, because I'm almost revisiting that feeling of, where is it? Where's I want to see the struggle that I'm living, but that may not be where they're coming from. That's a whole different other type of Black folk that are from the outside in, looking at what, W.E.B. Du Bois was talking about. That's an American experience that he's describing, but he's, speaking or trying to touch on that from a Ghanaian perspective, where they are the dominant group, and so it's very interesting to read more about what their experiences were and how they process racism in their part of the diaspora. But I was surprised that I was surprised. I was surprised that I was just like, where is the struggle? I need a little dose of struggle. It was really odd, but I was surprised at myself, I will say. And but at the same time, I appreciate the diversity in Black people. I appreciate the diversity in perspective. I appreciate the diversity, the fact that there are some Black people that just don't understand what you're talking about when you discuss racism or double consciousness, or being just judged as a person because of the color of your skin. That's just preposterous to them. So to see a different perspective, while also trying to tap into a familiar perspective at the same time with Mical Asefaw's work, the souls of Black folks, is very, very interesting. If you can look at it from the two different, there's multiple lenses happening. It's not just white and Black, it's like Black and then another Black. And then there's multiple lenses that we all get to see ourselves through. But I felt the sense of comfort that a lot of Africans experience, or a lot of people from predominantly Black cultures, where they don't need to defend themselves. It's just not a need, and we need to remember that being a Black in America is a very unique experience. It's very unique. And something that we need to appreciate, because there's so many layers to being Black in America, and it doesn't matter what your culture is. We're not talking about your ethnic makeup. You can be Jamaican or Nigerian or Eritrean or Sudanese, or it doesn't matter. In this country, you are Black, and there's a certain weight that comes with that. if you can appreciate what that is and how we really are amazing for going through what we go through and still being able to have our, the everyday femininities and the everyday, just the appreciation of ourselves and being able to hold on to our narratives. I think it's amazing that we do that on a day-to-day in this country. But that's what I have to say. I appreciate them both and I'm surprised in myself. But I learned a great deal about myself in this process. So very appreciative for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that response. Eva, did you want to add on? If not, that's okay.
I'll just say very briefly what surprised me. A couple of things that were obvious and then not obvious for Blanco's work. It was surprising. I've never seen portraits done in finger paint in my life before. I don't know about you all. Okay. And then I go to the other floor and I've never seen fine art sewn in silk before. It was like mind blowing, like, wow. And reading more about it, learning about it, there are reasons and complex reasons why these artists are doing these things, but that is what inspired me to do an exploration of forms, because I have been really just write whatever I want, and I'm a self-taught poet. I haven't taken classes, or so it's very intimidating to think about forms. So it surprised me that this is what got me to go into forms and to try some of these forms. And, my first pantoum and my first villanelle ever are part of this project. So it's like, okay, this can be done. And I got a better understanding of those forms, or thinking about, okay, if you're just going to sew in silk and you can make these beautiful images, it's amazing. Beyond that, though, for Sam Vernon's project, the project itself made me look at the Moad in a different way. Like, I'm a member of the Moad, I've been going to the Moad, but it made me look at it in such a different way, because even in the elevator, the pictures, the meaning of the pictures, the types of Black people who are pictured, how they are, all the ands that we've been talking about tonight are so important. And it gave me that appreciation for the entire museum from the moment you go in the front door, and make sure to look at everything and to experience everything and to go again and to notice that's why the Sam Vernon's works, the first day I'm worrying about my mask and trying not to, a lot of other concerns. I didn't even see these beautiful diaphanous things hanging from the ceiling. I had no idea until the second time and third time. So you can just go many, many times. And that was surprising to me, because I already go many times, but I went many more times than usual. And I used my eyes, my ears, my senses in a different way. And that was a surprise to me. And I'm going to carry that forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that response. And I want to thank all of you poets for joining in this conversation. I know for myself, I have such a more rich understanding of the exhibitions on view, of what poetry can look like and how we can explore ekphrastic poetry. And this has just been a lovely journey to see each of your individual readings, and then to have you all in the same virtual space in dialogue. And I just want to say thank you for participating in this project and being so flexible and adaptive as we do this online this time. And thank you to our very attentive audience as well, and for all the engaging questions. I want to give a special shout out to Reina Leon, who asked our very first question. Reina was integral in even establishing the Community Voices series at Moad in the first place several years back. And she actually invited most of this cohort as well. And so I want to give her a special thank you for all of the work that she's done to support poetry and poetry programming at Moad. And Elizabeth has just shared in the chat some information. We have a quick program survey. We do appreciate you filling that out so that we can know more programs to do and how to best support our community. We also hope that you continue to come to Moad, become a member. If you are able to financially support, we appreciate that as well. We accept donations through our website or via phone by texting 56512 and typing Moad SF. All of the lovely exhibitions that you saw in the visuals and that you heard about are on view at Moad. However, Soul of Black Folks and Thread for a Web Begun, Amakwa and Billy's exhibitions will be closing this upcoming Sunday, February 27th. So if you have not had a chance to see them and you are able to, please do come visit the museum so that you can experience these exhibitions in person. Luckily, Sam Vernon's work, Impassive Desires, on the first floor will be extended through September. So there's plenty of more time to come see that exhibition. And we'll have a whole new round of exhibitions reopening at the end of March for you as well. So please do visit our website to learn more about those. And lastly, because this is our poetry community, our poetry space, I want to plug that currently we are accepting applications for our Poets in Residence program, which will be also happening in the fall. We'll be accepting 2 residents who'll be working with us in the space and with a partner school to do more poetry workshops and writing. So I'll share that link in the chat as well, but please, if you are a poet and you're interested, apply, or if you know poets in your network and communities who would be interested, please share it with them as well. This is the link going in the chat right now. So thank you all for joining us on this journey. This has been absolutely incredible. And I hope you continue to support that work that we do and come visit the museum. Take care, everyone.
Thank you, Nia. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Nia.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nia. Thanks, everyone. It was really, really fun. I hope we keep in touch.
Absolutely.
I hope so.
Amazing work, everybody.
Yeah, it was
Thank
so
you.
fun. It's very inspiring. Thank you. Nourishing. Bye, y'all.
Yeah, it was very.
Bye. Thank you, everyone.
Good night.
Bye.